in particular. Even when Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, was killed by the IDF, you were out lauding him as a hero. To most people, he's the despicable head of a terrorist organization that perpetrated on October the 7th one of the worst terror attacks in modern history. What's heroic about that?
Well, I think when you look at it in a vacuum, it's a very different picture. It's kind of like if I, raped your mother and I kicked you in the nuts 3 times and then you punched me in the face and everybody just wanted to focus on you punching me in the face. I think that would be a very different conversation than when you looked at it, the whole of what happened. And the whole of what happened was Nakba. That's where it started. You have 750,000 Palestinians that got displaced. And then you've got multiple, acts of terror, in my opinion, on Israel's side that would make October 7th look like nothing. So to me, I think it was a retaliation, and I think that Hamas is a resistance organization, and I think that Israel is a terrorist.
When did Israel kill 1,200 people in a single day and wound nearly 7,000?
Well, you have... Nakba, there was, 15,000 people killed during Nakba. There was Sabra and Shatila. That was 3,500 civilians. Then you have 2014, they killed 1,500 civilians. 500 plus were kids. So any one of those days would have been much worse than October 7th, but nobody really talks about
those that. Didn't happen in a single day.
And October 7th is not nearly as bad as what they say.
Well, those didn't happen in single days, as you know.
Well, you have, Sabra and Shatila, that was 3,500 people, so that was basically 7 October 7ths. And October 7th, I think the numbers get inflated a lot too, because you're not taking into account that it was only 650 civilians, and there was the Hannibal Directive that was employed, and the Hannibal Directive is when the military is basically killing civilians so that they aren't taken as hostages. And that had to be hundreds of people, so I would argue that it was less than 500 civilians that were killed, and to me, that is much less than what the Israelis have been doing to the Palestinians.
But you said
the year when October 7th happened, they had killed hundreds of Palestinians that year. It was the bloodiest year for kids. So that was a reply to what had been happening.
But when you say that October 7th wasn't as bad as people have said, what do you mean by that? Because from Hamas's own boasting through their GoPro cameras, they mutilated, burned alive, raped and abused, beheaded some people, set fire to homes, they kidnapped babies, they kidnapped Holocaust survivors, grandparents. They did just about every act of depravity it is possible to do. And they didn't just do it, they gleefully posted it on social media and the internet so that we could all watch in real time the horrors that they were perpetrating. It's hard to imagine a more horrific act than what happened that day. Why would you try to downplay it?
Well, there was only 2 babies killed from what I was told, and one was in the hospital and the other one was shot by a bullet. There was no babies in ovens. There was no, beheaded people that I saw. The rapes were disproven. So all that was Israeli propaganda. And the problem is Israel has continued to lie and lie and lie, and they've been caught lying. And they're the only ones that have actually been caught red-handed raping prisoners. And they've done it, and the people that raped the prisoners were now heroes, and they got released, and there was nothing that happened to them. So I think it's very hypocritical to focus on things that they're doing and then try and blame them, on Hamas or the Palestinians.
It's interesting because
it's just, to me, total bullshit. It's just Israeli propaganda.
Yeah, listen, many people will listen to you and think that what you're spewing is bullshit propaganda from the other side. And the reason I say that is you say there was no raping or abuse of women, and yet the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten, reported in March this year that there was clear and convincing information that Israeli hostages in Gaza experienced sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, and cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment, and reasonable grounds to believe such abuse is ongoing. There was also reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence occurred during the 7th of October attacks in multiple locations across Gaza periphery, including rape and gang rape in at least 3 locations. So when you say it didn't happen, what you're really saying is you think that the United Nations report into all this, which established it absolutely did happen and was horrific, is what? Is a pack of lies? And if so, why would the United Nations lie?
Look, I wasn't there, but I have, seen articles that said that it did not happen. So, if it did happen, that's terrible. And I think that's, atrocious. I don't ever believe in rape, but, during, Sabra and Shatila, there was a, girl raped in front of her father. And, that's happened on the other side numerous times. I mean, it happened in the prison. I mean, they were literally rioting because they felt like they had the right to rape these prisoners. So to me, I think it's a bit hypocritical. You can't believe that you have the right to rape prisoners and then complain about them raping, your civilians as well. So I don't think it just can only go one way. I think it's atrocious on both sides.
You said Hamas are not terrorists, are an army fighting for their country against the worst terror organization on the planet. And yet Hamas were given power in Gaza in 2005. They were given billions of dollars, a lot of it in a very suspect manner by Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, because he wanted to create a rift between Palestinian groups, and I completely accept that. But there's no doubt from what has now emerged that Hamas spent most of that money not on benefiting the lives of Palestinian people in Gaza, but on building an elaborate tunnel system and arming themselves to the teeth so that they could perpetrate this act of horror on October the 7th in a strike against Israel that they hope would decapitate Israel. I'm just curious why you would go out of your way. You say you've read things, but you're a guy of big influence. You've got a big following, 30 odd million people on Instagram. With respect, and I say this respectfully, I understand why you want to support the Palestinian cause, and I'm sure there'll be many points of agreement we would have on that. But just to say, well, I read somewhere there were no rapes and abuse, it doesn't seem to me like you've really studied, or perhaps don't even want to study, the facts about all this, because it would go against your own narrative. Would that be fair?
I mean, look, I got no dog in this fight, Pierce. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Muslim. I'm just saying what I believe is right. And let's just say there was rapes. I mean, I think that's terrible. But like I said, they are, an occupied state, and they're operating in apartheid. So when you are kept in an open-air prison, there's going to be resistance. And how that resistance manifests itself is, it's going to be violent eventually. I mean, if you kill enough people and you take enough land and you treat people like second-class citizens, and, and you're stealing land in the West Bank, and you're just basically, encroaching these people's human rights on a daily basis, there's going to be repercussions. So, I'm not going to be the judge or jury, and I'm not going to condemn these people for fighting back. I think nobody had an issue with, South African apartheid and their resistance. So I don't know why there's an issue with the resistance in the clear apartheid that's going on here. You
went on a Patrick Bet-Davis podcast. He's a friend of this show. You said the Jews killed JFK and that Israel wanted October the 7th to happen so that Israel, had a reason to take the land. Let's just discuss those two things. What do you mean the Jews killed JFK?
So I believe that was an Israeli Mossad operation, and they've committed multiple false flag attacks. I mean, they've, the USS Liberty, you've got the Levin affair. I mean, so they've got a history of doing this, and I don't think it's crazy to think that they were involved in that assassination, and that's the reason that Trump didn't want to, release those files. And I think clearly it had to be embarrassing. Otherwise, why wouldn't he want to release it? And that's the only thing that I could think of that would be embarrassing, because everybody from that time is pretty much dead by now. So it would make sense. I mean, they wanted to cut off, it's now AIPAC, but the Zionist, organization that was doing all the funding that should have been registered as a foreign entity. And, he wanted to register them under FARA. He wanted to, take away their ability to have nukes. And, they didn't like that. So I believe that they killed JFK.
But just to be clear, I mean, you have absolutely no evidence that any Jews killed JFK, do you? Nothing.
Well, I mean, that's not true. I mean, Jack Rubenstein, that was the person that killed the supposed Patsy Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, he was a Jewish mob guy. And, there's been numerous documentaries tying the, Jewish mafia, the CIA. I mean, I wasn't there, but everything that I've seen evidence-wise points to Israel. Really? And they're doing it in Epstein Island. They did it in Epstein Island. I mean,
Yeah, but here's the problem I have with this. You say everything you've seen, right? It just seems to me like you see a lot of conspiracy theory stuff. I've read a lot about the JFK assassination. There is zero evidence that any Jews killed John F. Kennedy. Zero. Unless you want to go off into some mad conspiracy theory rabbit hole. And I say to you that you make these big statements and you have a huge following of people, many of whom will think, well, wow, if Dan Bilzerian says it, maybe it's true. And that way, I would argue, this is how a lot of conspiracy theory stuff in the end gets propagated and promoted to the detriment of society, because people like you who are very smart, there's no question of that, and very successful and made a lot of money being very successful. I'm just curious why you want to be so inflammatory without actually having any evidence. And as you say, to just sit back and say, well, I wasn't there. Well, I wasn't there. Obviously, I wasn't even born. But I know that there's no credible evidence that Jewish people killed JFK. And yet you just say it as a fact, as if somehow we should just believe this.
No, I didn't say it as a fact. I said that's what I believe. And if you look at, the history of people that have criticized Israel, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, JFK, Nixon, they all have similar fates. And so I don't think that's a coincidence. I also think that today a lot of, quote unquote conspiracy theories have all come true. So, about 2-3 years ago, being a conspiracy theorist, you were a nut job, wacko, whatever. And now it's just like every single one of them seems to be coming true, coming to fruition. So I don't know. I think once you see the government lie to you and lie to you on a scale like they did during COVID, you start questioning a lot of things. And I think it's healthy to question things. And I think one of the big reasons why I've marched down this path so far is because once I started questioning Israel and once I started speaking out against Israel, I saw the ramifications and I saw the pushback. And the side of right is usually never the side that's silencing people. The people that are on the right side of history are not the ones trying to, cut off free speech or punish people for what they say.
But you think the Jews killed Gaddafi as well?
Israel. I think that they have way too much control in our government, and I think it is not coincidence that everybody that's been critical of Israel has, either been overthrown, Shah of Iran, like every single person that's been critical of Israel has either been killed or thrown out of power. And I don't think that that is a coincidence. The reason we fought a lot of these wars is because of Israel. Israel lied to us. They told us that there was weapons of mass destruction. We fought many wars on their behalf, so their influence cannot be, disputed. And the people that we continuously fight just happen to be their natural enemies, and they have influence on what we do. And that's my biggest issue. That's actually one of the reasons why I kind of started marching down this path, is because I see how much control Israel has over our government, and it's not healthy. And I see our politicians acting on behalf of Israel instead of on behalf of what is best for the United States. And that is, as a veteran, where I really have fucking, huge problems with this.
Oh, I'm sure you do, but when you say that what was it you said? That the Jewish people said there were weapons of mass destruction. It was President Bush, he's not Jewish. It was Colin Powell, he wasn't Jewish as far as I'm aware. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Well, you're talking about 0.2% of the population, so obviously every single person in there is not Jewish, but it is benefiting Jewish interests, and we are operating on behalf of Israel. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying all of our politicians are Jewish, obviously, but what I am saying is that Israel has dirt and blackmail on our politicians. That's the only way to explain why they put the interests of Israel above our countries. And you see that. Look, I truly believe that Epstein Island was a Mossad operation, and they have dirt on our politicians, and they've done plenty of these, and that is why they control our country. Explain it out. Why else would our country be doing everything in Israel's benefit to our own detriment? Israel doesn't do anything for us. Why would we be doing that?
But we know why America, and the UK for that matter, Tony Blair, because I spoke to him about it at length at the time. We know why they went to war with Saddam Hussein in 2003. They went because they believed he had weapons of mass destruction. They were the ones who argued it. None of the senior people that argued it for America or the UK, in terms of Tony Blair, George Bush, Colin Powell, were Jewish. This idea that somehow Israel was orchestrating that war, I think, is completely nonsensical. My brother fought in that war for the British Army. He wasn't ordered into that war by Israel. It was a decision taken by George Bush and Tony Blair. It just seems to me that when people have accused you, if they have, of being anti-Semitic, this is the reason why. Is because you look everywhere for a reason to blame Israel for absolutely everything, even when there's no evidence that it was Israel involved in the actual orders that were taken. There is no evidence that Israel ordered the Iraq war. It was taken by George Bush's administration with the help of people like Tony Blair.
Well, we went there because Netanyahu testified in front of Congress that they had weapons of mass destruction, which was a total lie, and it was a lie to benefit Israel because that was an enemy of Israel. So what I'm saying is they are the beneficiary of what we are doing, and it's not in the best interest of the United States. So clearly they've got control over our politicians.
Yeah, but to be clear again, though,
I'm not saying our politicians are Jewish. I'm saying our politicians are doing what they're telling them to do.
Right. Well, that's slightly different to what you did say. And you said on Patrick Bet-David's podcast as well, they play the victim card so effing much about Jewish people. I mean, do you not understand why Jewish people might feel a sense of victimhood, given that 6 million of them were killed in World War II by a genocidal monster in the Holocaust? Do you not understand why that might make Jewish people feel that, yes, they have indeed been victims?
Yeah, I mean, that figure's been revised, but you know, I believe that Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to America, and I think it's the greatest threat to the world today. I truly believe that.
What do you mean the figure's been revised? What do you mean?
Well, they said that it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million, so they've revised the figure.
Well, how many people? How many people do you think were killed in the Holocaust?
271,000 that died in Auschwitz.
How many do you think were killed in the Holocaust?
I don't know, but I would bet my entire net worth that it was under 6 million.
Again, I simply ask you, Dan, what's the motivation for making claims like that? What do you stand to gain by trying to diminish what happened in World War II?
I'm just answering your question. I mean, I'm a gambler, so if I think that something is a low probability, then I would bet on it. And I don't know for a fact, but the evidence all says that it was less than 6 million. I mean, just the mathematics don't work. Like, you can't cremate that many bodies. Like, the whole gas chamber thing, it's a very ineffective way to kill people. So when people have researched this and they've done the due diligence, they said it's mathematically impossible.
You see, I'm sorry, but I just find that unbelievably offensive, and I'm not even Jewish. Again, there is clear evidence that 6 million people, almost predominantly Jewish, were killed in the Holocaust. 12 million were killed by the Nazis in total. They were a genocidal monstrosity of the Nazis who wanted to eliminate the Jewish people, and they tried extremely hard to do that.
You said 12 million were killed?
The Nazis killed 12 million people in World War II. 6 million were killed in 6 million were killed in the Holocaust. Or do you not believe that either?
Okay. I mean, Jews have killed far more Christians. Well, Jews have killed far more. Let's just accept the 6 million figure. Jews have killed far more Christians than that. I mean, it's not even close. If you look at the Bolshevik genocide, you look at the Holodomor, I mean, they've killed way more Christians. I mean, they basically invented the genocide. So, they denied the Armenian genocide. Israel denies that. They've lobbied the U.S. to deny that. I'm Armenian. They killed half of my people. So, and I'm not offended by that. If somebody questions that, it's not some crazy thing. I mean, Israel denies the Armenian Holocaust. Okay.
It sounds to me, Dan, like you do actually hate Jewish people.
No, I believe that Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to the world today. I look at what they're doing in the media. They're pushing this transgender nonsense. I mean, and they did it in Germany. The first transgender clinic was opened by a Jewish guy. And I don't like this perversion pushed on our children. I don't like the fact that 9-year-olds are reading about homosexual acts. I don't like that drag queens are reading them in schools. I don't like that Kamala Harris wants to pay for sex changes in prison so that men can turn into women and women can turn into men. And I don't like the fact that he's putting in, men into women's prisons, male rapists into women's prisons because they identify as women. I mean, it's just nonsense. I don't like men beating up women in boxing and sports. I think it's all nonsense, and I think it's leading to a degradation of moral fiber. And if left unchecked, I think it's going to ruin the world.
But again, you're blaming Jewish people. Why?
Because they're pushing this.
What do you mean they're pushing it? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, they're controlling the media. I mean, the DEI is being pushed by BlackRock. BlackRock's execs are all Jewish. All the Disney execs are Jewish.
Dan,
they're pushing it on children.
But do you accept, Dan, that you are just blatantly anti-Semitic?
Look, I have an issue with that term. I mean, I think the real Semites are the Palestinians. I mean, they you know, the DNA tests that they've done on the Israelis that are living over there, they're Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews. I don't even think they're actual Semites. They don't have ancient Hebrew DNA, which is why DNA testing is illegal in Israel.
But, I mean, you're literally denying their existence now. I mean, you are just a brazen anti-Semite, aren't you? You hate Jewish people, you hate Israel, you hate the state of Israel, its government, everything about it. You're blaming them you blame them in this interview for literally absolutely everything.
When you say, well, I think most of the problems today is caused by Jewish supremacy. I believe that.
I'm honestly gobsmacked that you would say all this publicly, given what a high profile you have.
Yeah, I mean, it is not a it's not a popular opinion for somebody that, you know, cares about money and cares about, you know, not being canceled. I mean, that's the problem, is you can say whatever you want against Muslims. You can be, you know, super anti-Muslim. You can talk about them and nobody cares. But if you say anything about Jewish people, you get canceled. They, you know, look what they did to Kanye. I mean, so why are they such a protected class? Let me ask you that.
I don't think they are. I think they're a class that get targeted by people like you, and indeed by Kanye, who spewed horrible anti-Semitic nonsense. But yours, it seems to me, to be more insidious, because you're literally blaming.
So you're literally blaming. With respect, let me finish. Not the other way around.
You're literally blaming Jewish people for almost everything that's happened that you don't like in the world. That is the purest personification of anti-Semitism right there. That's what it is.
Well, when you have a religion that promotes supremacy, when you have a religion that says that you are better than other people, and when you have a religion that says it's okay to steal from other people as long as they're not Jewish, when you have a religion that says it's okay to rape people that aren't Jewish, when you have a religion that talks about having sex with, you know, kids that are under 3 years old, when you have a religion that promotes these things and promotes supremacy, I think you're going to have problems. And you see that in Israel. Israel is a manifestation of that religion. And I think that religion is, you know, it's terrible. I don't believe in white supremacy. I don't believe in Jewish supremacy. I don't believe in supremacy at all. And right now, I think you have massive Jewish supremacy.
You sound like a Nazi.
I mean, why do you say that?
That's literally what Nazis would have said in World War II. They would have literally articulated their hatred of Jewish people and the reasons why in exactly the way you've just done.
I don't have a hatred for Jewish people.
You do?
I don't like a religion that says that they're better than other people. And what's that?
Well, you do. You obviously do. It's blatant. No one watching this will draw any other conclusion. I'm staggered about how brazen you've been.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't like it when people think they're better than other people. And you see that in Israel, and they're acting like that, and they're treating Palestinians like second-class citizens. They're treating them like subhuman beasts, and it sells that in their Talmud. So it says if you are not a Jew, that you are basically subhuman. And I don't think that Judaism and Christianity go hand in hand. I mean, they believe that Jesus is in hell burning in human shit, and they believe the Virgin Mary is a whore. So I don't think those are two religions that really intersect very well. But you know, we've been programmed that they do, and we've been programmed that it's okay and that Jews are the chosen people, and I just disagree with that. I think everybody's equal.
Do you even comprehend how this interview is going to play out when it airs?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be bad. But, you know, my opinion is not politically correct, but I believe that is the truth.
You're living in Qatar now.
Well, that's where I'm at right now. I'm not living here, but visiting.
Right. Is it the case that you feel safer to spew this kind of stuff from Qatar than you would spewing it in the United States?
Well, I mean, I've had a lot of Jewish people attack me since I started standing up in support of Palestine. When I started saying things that were against Israel, I found that I had my Jewish business manager tried to extort me. I had lawyers do things that were illegal, and you know, I found a lot of, you know, just hatred from the Jewish community because I was speaking out against a genocide, and that really opened my eyes to what's going on.
You know why Jewish people?
Like I said, rarely is it the case that people on the right side of history are the ones that are trying to silence people.
Yeah, the reason Jewish people may dislike you is because of your obvious hatred for them and everything they stand for. I mean, you've literally spent the last 20 minutes on an anti-Semitic rant that makes Kanye look like a choir boy. I'm staggered, but also bemused as to what you think you'll gain from this, other than you're just laying bare your anti-Semitism for everyone to see.
I don't think I'm going to gain anything. I think it'll be horrible for me, but it's what I believe. I don't think that Jews like Christians, and you see it when they killed them during the Holodomor, the Bolshevik genocide. I mean, the Bolsheviks, the leadership was 84% Jewish, and they were just mass killing Christians, and nobody talks about that.
Let me just ask you one more time. Let me just ask you one more time to be honest.
History books don't cover that.
Right, let me just ask you one more time, just for clarity. And I think you should be honest. But do you hate Jewish people?
No, I don't.
Then why do you spew such hatred about them?
Well, I don't like what they've done. I don't like what their religion preaches. I don't like what's going on in Israel. I don't like their influence over our government. So,
What do you like about Jewish people?
I mean, I would say on average they're more intelligent.
That's it?
I mean, I don't have too many. I mean, look, there's 2 billion Muslims, but everybody wants to, promote this anti-Muslim, this hatred for Muslim, like they're all, these terrorists. And I think the Israelis are the terrorists. I think they are the ones perpetuating the big acts of terrorism. And, nobody wants to talk about that.
And what do you say to Jewish people who may watch this and be utterly horrified by what they're hearing?
They can be horrified. I mean, I was horrified to find that they mass murdered Christians. I was horrified to learn the things that they teach in the Talmud. I was horrified that they think that Jesus is burning in shit in hell. I was horrified that they think that the Virgin Mary is a whore. I was horrified to learn that they think it's okay to steal from Gentiles. I was horrified to hear that there's, 2 sets of justice. I was horrified to find out that they think it's okay to, gang rape Palestinian prisoners. I was horrified